Good afternoon. I'm Steve Bloom, Vice President at the Commonwealth Foundation. We live at a time of unprecedented global prosperity. By every measure, people around the world are living richer, longer, healthier, more abundant lives. The percentage of people in poverty around the globe is lower than ever before in human history. What's the transformative, magical formula that's permanently lifting people on every corner of the earth from poverty to prosperity? Free markets. And yet, paradoxically and disturbingly, here at home, the very thing raising standards of living for humanity, the proven reliable cure for poverty, the only one that's ever been created, the source of so much good is under blistering attack. So our esteemed panelists are going to help us get back to basics, get back to reality, get back to the simple everyday truth about the transformative power of free markets. If you have questions, please do write them on the cards and pass them in. We're going to have some time at the end to answer those questions. But first, let me introduce our panelists. Starting from the far end, we have John Persinger, CEO of the Erie Downtown Development Corporation. Next, we have Donna Partin, President and owner of Maids. Next, we have Senator Judy Ward of the 30th Senatorial District. Judy is a last-minute fill-in for someone who had an unavoidable conflict. And Judy, thank you for stepping up. Judy's actually my own senator, so I especially appreciate having her on the panel. And then right next to me is Commissioner Christian Leinbach of Berks County. So, John, let's get started with you. Can you tell us about what's happening in Erie and the transformative power of the coalitions you're unleashing into the urban marketplace?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me today. I think there's a slide that may show some of the images that you can find in the streets of downtown Erie. But just out of curiosity, show of hands, how many people have been to Erie? Quite a few. I was going to suggest we move this there next year, but since you've already been there, we can get you back. For those that know, Erie is a great city with a lot of great potential. It sits in the northwest corner. It's on the Great Lake. We have Presque, which gets 4 million visitors each year. We have a Fortune 500 company, Erie Insurance, headquartered in our downtown. But at the same time, with all this great potential, we're a city that has a lot of challenges. If you go to the next two slides, I can talk through some of those challenges. So we are a city like many post-industrial cities across the Commonwealth that has suffered from years of population and economic decline. We've got 6,600 abandoned or vacant homes out of 45,000. The poverty rate in the city is 26%. It's 40% for African Americans. It's 46% for children under the age of 18. Our school district's in financial distress. And we have the highest property tax rate in the entire Commonwealth in the city. And it gets worse. In 2017, we were named the worst city in America for African Americans. 2018, 16501, the zip code where I work, it was identified as not just the poorest zip code in Pennsylvania, but the poorest zip code in the entire country. The median income is $10,800. We were ranked 513 out of the 515 fastest growing cities. And December of last year, we were identified as having a negative 4.8% growth rate over the last 10 years. So you look at these conditions and you would think, this isn't a place of investment. There's not a lot of hope in the community. But that is absolutely farthest from the truth. And the reason why there's so much optimism and confidence in the community right now, it's because of the private sector. 2 years ago, we had, if you go to the next slide, we had a comprehensive plan done for the city. And there was a group of business leaders who were trying to figure out who was going to implement the plan. The mayor at the time had no interest. Other organizations had no interest. So the CEO of Erie Insurance, our major employer, asked the author of the plan what to do. He said, one, you have to start in your core, and two, go out to Cincinnati and talk to the Cincinnati Center City Development Corporation. private entity that's been doing redevelopment work in the over-the-Rhine neighborhood for the last 15, 20 years. So they went out, a group of 8 business leaders and philanthropic leaders went out to Cincinnati, and they basically came away with 4 lessons. 1, you have to start in the core of your downtown. 2, you have to cluster your investments. We've had the problem in Erie of sprinkling some money over here to appease political factions, sprinkling money over here to appease constituents, sprinkling money down here. And at the end, you don't see the impact. So they said, sprinkle your investments together to spur that market confidence and build momentum. And the 3rd and 4th lessons were really the most important. 3rd, you need to form a private sector redevelopment company. The government is just not up to the task. It moves too slow, it's too cumbersome, it's too burdened with regulation. So you need a separate private entity to go in and redevelop these properties. And 4, you need private money to make this happen. Harrisburg is not coming to bail you out. DC is not coming to bail you out. If you want to save your city, you have to do it yourself, and you have to do it with your own money. So this group of 8 business leaders came back, and they set up 2 organizations. The Erie Downtown Development Corporation, that's our organization. We are the redeveloper of properties that Cincinnati suggested. And then they set up the Erie Downtown Equity Fund. And they raised $27.5 million for that to serve as a private investment and redevelopment fund. So we've been going in and working, if you go to the next slide, we've been focused on acquiring and redeveloping some of our blighted properties downtown. If you look at this picture, this is Main Street in Erie. And if you look at those buildings, the upper floors are vacant, ground floor retail is vacant. We have a suburban McDonald's that I see, our office is right across the street, and I see the ambulance show up once a week to pull away an overdose, or I see a fight or prostitution, drug dealing out in the parking lot. Not exactly the place where that would spur a lot of market confidence. So that's where we're working. We set the mission to acquire and redevelop these properties in the core. Go to the next slide. We set an organization that was really going to be metric driven, taking lessons from the private sector. We know we have to set goals. We have to have metrics so we can be held accountable. I told our board, I'm not joining an alphabet soup or economic development organization. We are going to set goals to get things done. So our goals are to increase the number of residents downtown, increase the number of businesses downtown, and increase the quality of life in downtown. If you go to the next slide, I can talk about how we're doing that. We're going to achieve these goals through basically 4 tactics. 1, acquiring and redeveloping these blighted properties, because no one else is going to do it. 2, attracting new businesses, residents, and additional investment to downtown Erie. 3, enhancing the public spaces. So we have a wide Main Street, we have cracked sidewalks, we have 8 different types of light poles in our downtown. I don't know how people didn't think that there were 8 different types of light poles, but it hasn't been a priority. Now it is. 4, we're creating programming, events and activities that are going to draw people downtown. If you want to go to the next slide. So these are just some images from our downtown. Again, these are blighted properties. These are vacant properties. On the upper right-hand side, the white building in the middle is a historic building. It's built in 1839. For the past 11 years, our art museum was using it as storage. We went in and we decided to lease it and turn it into office space for us. We brought a tech company that relocated it into town and to the upper floors. So we're really trying to spark some momentum, generate some market confidence, and get some more investment into downtown Erie. If you go to the next slide. Our first acquisitions were a total of 100,000 square feet, 8 buildings that are strategically located in downtown Erie. They either overlook Perry Square, which is our main public park, our central park, or they overlook State Street, our main street. For decades, these upper floors have been vacant. There are even ground floors that are vacant. So we went in there and saw it as strategic property that needs to be revitalized. It needs to have new life in it, and it needs to spur that confidence for other investment. This is all happening because we had a group of business leaders in the community step up and commit that initial $27.5 million for us to buy and start redeveloping these properties. If you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to leave you with a topic that Mr. Kemp just spoke about, opportunity zones. So we know our $27.5 million is just a portion of what we need to really revitalize all of downtown. We need about $100 million. In a place like Erie, talking about $100 million of investment would have been a pipe dream in the past. But over the last several months, I've been all over the country. I've been in New York in the offices of big banks. I've been at Stanford last month talking at a 500-plus person Opportunity Zone Investment Summit. I've been in different places where I never thought Erie, Pennsylvania's name would be mentioned. But Erie, Pennsylvania is on the map for Opportunity Zone investors. And we in Erie owe a big debt of gratitude for Senator Scott and Senator Booker for co-sponsoring this legislation. We hope that our senators and representatives in Pennsylvania can see the benefit of this federal legislation and create a matching legislation. So thank you for allowing me to share the story of Erie, and I look forward to seeing you all in downtown Erie next year.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. And I love what you said, the one line that really stood out to me, the government is just not up to the task. That's so key. Now we're going to switch to Donna Partin. Donna, you're a successful entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are the quiet heroes of economic transformation. You create not only a product or service that people need, but you create a lot of great jobs for people along the way. Can you share your perspective on the power of free markets in the private sector?
As Steve mentioned, I own and operate 4 Maids locations here in South Central Pennsylvania, and I'm not a public speaker. Now, I do some speaking to my employees, but the nice thing about that is they have to listen to me. So bear with me.
They have to like it.
I'm going to go by notes just because I want to make sure that I get my ideas across. I first bought my first location 30 years ago, and that was in Mechanicsburg. And Maids is a franchise, and what that means is that some of the processes and the systems are already created for us, which is nice. Some of which we have to use, but some of which we can choose to use as well. So there's a lot of autonomy within my business as well. And I love owning my own business as well as working with a group of very hardworking people. Now, aside from cleaning homes, I believe that one of the main purposes of my business is workforce development. We offer training, basic job skills for unskilled and transitional laborers in our area. Basic skills such as arriving on time, being clean, in uniform, and physically able to perform your job each day. It sounds like it's very simple tasks, but these skills we are constantly training our workers on. Then they must perform at a consistently high level in a variety of situations each day. It is somewhat demanding. These are important skills to learn and for them to take with them when they go to their next step, their next career. And the reality of my business is we do not offer family-sustaining wages. That's just the reality of it. We offer a stepping stone to your next chapter in your life, your next career. And we encourage all of our employees to better themselves through promotion, continued education, and training for that next step. We have many success stories as well that have come from workers of mine, employees of mine. For instance, I have 11 administrative staff members within my organization. All 11, except for one, have started out as cleaners, and they've moved up the ranks, 4 of which are managers now, and all of which started with very minimal skills, but because of hard work and perseverance and some patience, they've worked their way up the ranks to a salaried job as well as a future. One of my employees actually was just accepted to nursing school, and she's going to continue working for us for the next 2 years while she does her clinicals. Fortunately, schedules are going to work out so that she's able to do that. We have several other people as well who are going to school either online or at night in a variety of careers, such as vet assistant, medical coding, and business administration, and other areas. And although we encourage our employees to improve themselves and try to give them basic skills, most are not able to for a variety of reasons. The most common hurdle is the affordability. The cost and complexity of education and training is prohibitive for so many people. As well as I believe we have too narrow of a scope in our own cultural perspective of higher education. We have driven this conventional idea that college is the only next step. Truth is, it is not. And I can remember when I was back in high school, our perception of people that went to vo-tech. Well, the truth is, the ROI on a person going to a vo-tech school these days is much better than someone going to a 4-year expensive liberal arts school for majoring in, not to pick on a major, but art history, because everybody picks on that one. There are so many other education training options that need to become much more conventional. And for free markets need an entry-level job, basic skills jobs to perform mostly manual tasks for society, but we need to create a better conduit for self-improvement from the entry level. We need to be careful about eliminating your entry-level job. By that I mean some jobs are eliminated through technology and innovation, and a lot of that is happening today, and that's okay, but we need to keep evolving. And as we evolve, so will the jobs and our free market needs. We will always need laborers to do some sort of entry-level tasks. And the movement or the idea that minimum wage needs to be family sustaining is a great soundbite for politicians. But it is very destructive to free market. Minimum wage was never meant to be family sustaining. Minimum wage was always intended to be entry into the working world and to better yourself there by creating value in yourself. My point is that we need to provide more opportunity, affordable opportunity for education and skills training to our workforce. And then we need to evolve and pivot from the old notion that college is the only option. And I think, too, that it needs to be some sort of a public-private effort that is going to make a difference. And you see a little bit of movement away from just forcing young people to go into college. And there are other opportunities out there, but they need to be more affordable. We need to figure out a way so that people can better themselves in an affordable manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. That is inspiring, and talking about the value, the importance of those entry-level jobs to the people who have them and to society at large. It's just amazing, and it's a message that's not being heard out there today. So thank you for raising that. Christian, what examples are you seeing in the arena of government unleashing the power of free markets to transform, and what are some successes and obstacles you've seen?
Sure. I'm going to start by bragging a little bit. A week ago, Berks County had its bond rating increased to AAA stable outlook. That is the highest bond rating you can get. Now, you might say, well, what's that have to do with this discussion? There are two core reasons why that happened. One, a significant increase in our commercial and industrial tax base, as well as jobs. There's been a decrease over the last 12 years in county government jobs. And it's because county government has been very fiscally responsible. So let's start with premise number one. Government does not create meaningful private sector jobs. The private sector creates those jobs.
Here.
Government is either a hindrance or a help. They're a hindrance if tax policy is too high. John, you highlighted that. And they're a hindrance if the regulatory environment is too great. We need to understand that right out of the gate. We don't create the jobs the private sector does. Number two, and this, I'm starting on negatives. Buying new businesses in our community at some point costs the taxpayers more money than it will generate. There's been a lot said about Amazon in New York City. Let me tell you, I happen to agree with the folks in New York City. There is a point at which you're wasting taxpayers' money when you spend millions, and in that case, I believe it was in the billions, to attract a business to say you won. Instead, we should be putting our focus on the businesses that are already in our community. One of the things that I've shared with a number of people when I talk about economic development, we get caught up focusing on the Amazons of this world, and we forget two important facts. And in our county, we are focused on these. Number one, the sector of business that drives the jobs numbers and drives the economy are not in Detroit. They're small businesses, in most cases with 50 or fewer employees. They drive the economy, they drive the job numbers. Number two, most big businesses were once a small business. Our largest employer is East Penn Manufacturing, almost 8,000 jobs, still a family-owned business. And in 1947, when that company started in Bowers in Berks County, it was 2 or 3 people. It was a small business. So what do we do? Look, I get it. The taxes and school property taxes, folks, that is a huge problem in Pennsylvania. It's a huge problem in Berks County. We need to eliminate school property tax and replace it with a sales and earned income tax. But what can we do while we are in a position as a county commissioner and say, I need the state to fix this, or I need the feds to fix this? Let me give you 2 quick examples, and then I'll close my comments. Number one, a number of years ago, a business came to me and said, Christian, we want to put on a 200,000 square foot expansion. The owner of our company is in Mexico, and we just found out it's going to take us 1 year to 2 years to get through the approval process. He doesn't want to do it. He's going to do the project down in Texas. I said, will you give me an opportunity to try something we haven't done before? What we did, we pulled together all of the players, the municipality, the utility companies, the contractors, the planning commission, the zoning, everybody into a room. We had the project presented by the developer explaining the timeline, what they needed to be able to do. And over 3.5 hours, we came to an agreement that this was a project we wanted in our county, that this is what had to happen. Here was the timeline in which it had to happen. We had that meeting in January. The building permit was issued the middle of March of the same year. The owner of the company said to us they had never gone through a process like that before. We didn't skip any steps. Wow. You know what the key was? Communication. Everybody on the same page and making commitments in front of other people. Because we had a record, and when somebody tried to move away from that record, I chaired the meeting. We said, hey, wait a minute. This is what was committed to. Example number 2. We have a major development going on right now. Many of you have heard of the VF Factory Outlet. That was sold a couple of years ago to Equus Development. Equus again came to me, and we employed what we now call the JEAP process, Joint Economic Approval Process. We had 2 municipalities. We brought everybody in, again, about a 3.5-hour meeting. That project is well underway. Some of the projects are already completed. It is a game changer. Anyone that is familiar with what I'm talking about, it's in Wyomissing and West Reading. We fixed it not by going to Washington or Harrisburg and saying, we need some new law. I have an opinion. I think we have too many laws the way it is. We sat down and said, let's use some common sense. Let's sit down and work together. And I think a big part of what we need to do is with economic development, take the political people, I'm going to say the pseudo-political, the chamber, in our case, the Chamber Alliance, your redevelopment authority, and private developers, and sit down and find out what are the challenges in your community. Today, Berks County's unemployment rate is 3.6%. It's lower than the state average. We are at the highest employment level our county's ever had, and our biggest problem right now, Manufacturing is our #1 job category, 32,000 jobs. We have to fill, just to stay even, 1,500 to 1,600 jobs a year just to keep those positions filled. And let me tell you, we still have the battle of, if you don't go to college, you're a loser. We here need to change that discussion. It's not about college, it's about a career. And the career that is best for you and fits and helps you become a valuable part of your society, your community, but more importantly, something you want to do. We need to stop saying to our children that you should go to college, but if college doesn't work out, here's what the other things you can do. We need to challenge our children that there are great career opportunities out there. Some require different levels of support, but we need to highlight the value of the trades in our community. You can't ship a plumbing job to China. You can't do it.
Thank you, Christian. I was most encouraged to hear about the cooperative communication that you have between the different agencies at every level. There's no telling, there's no way to keep statistics on how many businesses don't invest in Pennsylvania because they've heard about how our legendarily difficult permitting process slows down development and makes it sometimes impossible. And the layers, all the different layers. So that's fantastic innovation, very encouraging. Judy, and again, thank you again, Judy, for joining the panel at the 11th hour, stepping up to the challenge. Judy, your family's been immersed in the free market in your home county and beyond. Can you talk about how you've seen the transforming impacts of the free market on your community, and from your perspective also as a House member and now a senator?
Thank you, Steve, and it's a pleasure to be here and be on the panel. And I'll just share some thoughts that I have on the free market and what it means to business and communities and employees. I've always been a supporter of business and the free market, always, even before I came to the legislature 4 years ago, because I see what it means to a community, what it means to families and employees and their families, and what it means to the economy. I'll start with our family story. My husband's grandfather started a trucking business. Next month it will be 88 years old. And he started with a week after his first son was born, my father-in-law, and he said he needed money to pay the hospital bill. So he and another gentleman bought a truck, and they would take eggs from central Pennsylvania to New York City. And as they did that a little bit, he was tallying up the expenses, and he realized he needed to bring something back to make money. So he got oil in New York, and he would bring it back to the farmers. So he had this whole thing going. Now it's kind of hard to imagine that you would have eggs and oil in the same truck. It's kind of like, it blows my mind a little bit, but. So he's done that. He passed the business on. It grew. He passed it on to his son, my father-in-law. He ran the business. He's passed it on to his sons, and my husband is now the CEO. He is the only family member of his generation in the business. Actually, my brother-in-law also is in the business. He also works there. We have 2 sons and twin nephews that are now the 4th generation. And it's so exciting to see the difference in strategy and energy and ideas. But what happened in the trucking industry in 1980, before 1980, you were told this is an area that you can haul to. You can pick up and you can deliver in this area, and you pretty much could do whatever you wanted. You could charge whatever you wanted. Everyone made money. Every trucking company made money. You didn't have to be creative or innovative, or you didn't have to be very good at it, but you made money. And in 1980, deregulation happened. And that was a game changer. And you had to be very competitive. It became an extremely competitive business. And now our company operates on pennies on a dollar. So you have to be sharp, you have to have a sharp pencil, you have to get things right. And sometimes, you know, formulas, you have to find, it's like a cocktail. You have to get the right mix of everything. Sales and, you know, expenses and all of that. And so it's become very, very competitive. And our sons used to say, you know, Dad's so serious and he's so focused on work. Well, now that they're in the business, they realize it's a tough business. But it's changed, it's made people innovative, creative, it's made prices go down, it's helped consumers because, you know, they're not paying a lot of money for their transportation. Maybe they are paying a lot of money, but it's so competitive, it's driven the prices down. So it's become a different kind of business. But I will tell you, it is so rewarding. Last evening I came in and I met my son here, and we have now 19 service centers from Buffalo to Charlotte, and out to Ohio and here to Philadelphia. And I met my son here. He was visiting we have a Camp Hill service center. And he said, Mom, I was at a retirement dinner for an employee. And he came up to me and he said, thank you so much for the opportunity to work for your company. I've raised my children. I've sent them to college, all because you gave me an opportunity. And that kind of says it all. That was very powerful to me. So, you know, I see the benefits of what business and free market business does in the community. You know, oftentimes I've had visits from unions and they'll say to me, you know, this is what's wrong with business this and business and ugly business. And I think these are the people and these businesses are sponsoring your ball teams. And they're supporting your nonprofits and your schools and all sorts of things. That's not evil, right? That's what we're about. That's capitalism. That's what we were founded on, hard work. And it just always boggles my mind that people can't see beyond that. But, you know, there's a lot of lessons there, and hard work and creativity and sharpening your pencil, you know, is the American way, right? And we should strive for that. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Jenny.
Today.
Wow. This may be, Judy, this may be your first PLC panel, but I have a feeling it probably won't be your last. Nicely done. Thank you. We've got some questions from the audience. Thank you for submitting, and I think there's still a little bit of time if you have any other questions. Please do submit them. This is for John. John, what do you see as the most important thing/factor to get Erie away from being at the bottom of these categories? You talked about at the beginning of your presentation some of the difficult rankings that you've been faced with.
We need private investment. We've had this downward spiral. So we've had a declining economy. The local taxing bodies have increased the taxes. People put less money into their property because they don't want to pay the taxes. So then the property values decline. The taxing bodies increase the taxes to offset the loss in revenue. The properties decline even further. So we really need to break this downward cycle. And I think the only way we're going to do that is if we have those private investors like our board members who are willing to step up, put this money in, take a risk, and wait for it to pay off. It's going to pay off. I assure you it's going to pay off. I tell my board that all the time. It's just going to take time. So we need that private investment to be willing to be patient, and we need more of it. $27.5 million is going to get us through that one block. And we've got 25 square miles in the city of Erie that needs a lot of TLC.
Thank you, John. Another audience member asked Christian if you could comment on warehouse development and how and county participation in that and the future benefits to the county of that.
Well, I have a pretty good idea where the question's coming from. If anyone lives along an interstate corridor, warehousing has become a very common type of construction. Number one, that's happening because of us. Consumers are changing the way we buy things. If you're buying online, you're driving the warehouse business. That's part of what's happening. As far as the county, that's one of the things I talked about, the layer. There's this idea that the county is the one that dictates where that zoning is. We don't. We only have a recommendation component to our planning commission. Municipalities are the ones that set the zone. And the problem we have in Pennsylvania that most other states do not experience, in federal law when it comes to zoning, every district must provide for every use. A district in most of the rest of the country, and I know this because I work with other commissioners, is a county. A district in Pennsylvania is a municipality unless the municipalities join together. I live in northern Berks County. There are 4 or 5 that have joined together, and they have a joint comp plan, but they still have to provide for every use in that area. So it is impossible to say we're not going to allow warehouses anywhere in our township. Some townships have tried to do that, and if they have viable space, they end up losing in court. You can't zone that out. The other aspect is the warehouses of today are not the same as the warehouses of even 20 years ago. I've been in several, the PetSmart warehouse up in Bethel Park 78. It is the most computerized facility I have ever been in. It also provided a lot of work for our largest employer, East Penn Manufacturing. All of the tow trucks run on electric, and all of the batteries are change out East Penn Manufacturing, or Deca batteries as we know them. So the county's role is not the one of determining what goes where. My role on individual projects, and I've not done Jeep with any warehouses. I've done it with Cambridge Lee, copper manufacturing facility, and most recently Equus Partners, which is a combination manufacturing, Teleflex, Drexel University, Tower Health Education Facility, VF new retail space, and a number of professional offices.
Thank you, Chris. And you know, I know one of the things about that industry that we call it warehousing, I think more properly called distribution and logistics, folks often don't realize it's a value-added industry. It's not just taking something and sitting it somewhere. In many cases, they're packaging, they're shipping, they're creating loads on trucks. They might be Ward trucks or any other kind of trucks that are taking them all over the country. But they're actually setting it up so that it makes sense for the retailer ultimately who purchases it for the consumer end of the process.
And the numbers that we've seen at the county, the starting wages are $15, $16, and $17 an hour with full health care benefits. That is not, people think these are minimum wage jobs. They are not minimum wage jobs.
Well, we have like 3 minutes left, and I want to ask you guys a question, more of a personal question. And I didn't tell you I was going to ask this, but how have free markets transformed your life? Just think about in your own life, whether any stage, how have free markets transformed your own life? We had great examples of how they transformed other people's lives, but anyone can jump in as you think of a way that free markets have transformed your own life. Judy?
Back in 2008, my husband had just taken over as CEO of the company, and we started to have the Great Recession, and things started to go, and our drivers knew there was something wrong because our trucks weren't full. They knew there was a problem. And my husband came home one day and he said, I'm sick. I have to ask our employees to take a pay cut. And I am sick over this, and I'm going to take the biggest pay cut of all. I swallowed hard. I said, okay. But our employees are so loyal and so good. They did that, and then as things got better, we were able to reinstate their wages and then continue upward. But it was so hard and so many sleepless nights for my husband. And another example of when people are talking about the bad corporate world and those corporations or those businesses, those bad businesses. And I think you have no idea what it's like to carry the future of 1,400 employees, in our case, on your back. And every decision you make affects those employees and yourself and your own family. So that's how it affects me personally.
Thank you. Others?
I'd like to mention that I love the idea of the gig economy that we have that's growing right now, and that would be your rideshare drivers, your grocery delivery, because what autonomy that gives to an individual to be self-employed, because they can decide when they want to work and who they want to work for at all times, as well as the service that they're providing is allowing families to have a little bit more freedom and free time. I really love the gig economy that's growing.
Christian?
I often have young people come up to me and say, I want to run for office, what should I do? And I'm 60 years old. I'm in my 12th year as a county commissioner. Most of the rest of my life was private sector. And what I tell them is, find a career, do it, stay involved in your local community, work in campaigns, but learn about the private sector and the role the private sector plays in our everyday lives. I don't think someone should serve as an elected official if they've never been, not an owner, but have never spent significant time in the private sector. I don't think they can understand what it is they are doing to other people.
And thank you, Christian. John, 10 seconds.
Many of you come from communities like Erie. They've lost a lot of hope. They've seen some struggles. In our own community, my mom's family moved there in the early 50s. So there's about 25 members of my mom's side there in town. This is the first time that they've seen hope and optimism for the future. And that's because we have a group of private sector CEOs who've stepped up and they're willing to invest in their community.
Thank you, John, and thank you to all the panelists.
Thank you.